System concepts, Article 19, demanding rewards. It is very important for us to be very egoistic on the path to internal power. While externally, we should have manners and act correctly to other members, internally we need to intensify our egoistic desire for the goal. We are not on the path for the friends or to save the world. It has to be for our self-desire. That is the only way we can increase our desire to pass the barrier. We connect to friends and teach them and learn from them, but it all needs to be for our self-benefit. That self-benefit is to be corrected in our perception and consciousness. And here's a quote. Why do I need to study, work, live, and where will all this ultimately take me? We should regard the Creator in our every act and always want Him and cleave to Him. We must constantly think and examine what He wants from us. That purpose should be right in front of us every single moment. If the goal is always clear, that will turn one into a Kabbalist, and we can begin to feel the knowledge from the spiritual worlds. Learning more or less of the text is of little importance. We use the knowledge to connect with the material. The more we study, the greater our demand for the Creator becomes, and the more intense the question, why have I still got nothing? Where is the result of my efforts? I've put in so many hours of work, lost a lot of money because I do not work when I learn. I do not give enough time to my family. I could have had more fun in other places. All these arguments only increase our egoistic demand of the Creator. Why have I still got nothing? For that reason, we must claim reward for every minute, every second that we put into Kabbalah. We should not say, I'm here because I'm an altruist. We can be altruistic elsewhere. But in Kabbalah, we should be completely stingy. We must question every minute given to Kabbalah. Why? What for? Only then will we focus directly on the goal. If we do not demand reward for every minute, it means that we do not need the next minute, that we make no demands from our studies. If that is the case, we will be left empty-handed. Examination of the reasons for our actions every minute is our greatest asset. Our minds and bodies vehemently revolt against it. We would do anything, draw pictures, learn meticulously about the Sfirot, the worlds, write articles about Kabbalah, anything to escape examining the aim, the primary question of his connection with the Creator. From chapter 4.1 about the study, from the book Path of Kabbalah by Rav Michael Leitman. We do not have the vessels of bestowal, altruism, before the barrier. What we do have is a very basic ego that just desires rest and relaxation. We need to use all the desire for spirituality that we are given by our future state to focus on our ego so it evolves. The tension between connecting correctly externally while feeling intense distance from others internally is exactly what is called revelation of evil. This is a crucial requirement to increase our desire for internal power to handle that tension. And here's another quote. The entire egoism is in the exact point between man and the Creator. You will have to extinguish your egoism to the exact measure that you want to cleave to Him. The Creator can be felt only where the egoism is extinguished. That sums up our entire work, and that is precisely what we are forbidden to speak of to one another. We are forbidden to speak of the intent, the reasons for what exactly is it that we demand of the study. However, we can talk as much as we want about the study, the Paratzufim, the Sfirot. It is not important if our friend knows the material or not. Do not be afraid of being told something incorrect. It is meaningless. The important thing is that you learned a little, and maybe you did it with a friend. Therefore, if someone asks you something, do give the answer. Do not be afraid of being wrong, because it's not important. However, do not slight your knowledge. This knowledge is very important because the result of the study will be a unification of the experiences and the inner feeling of the text being studied. You will begin to understand what a screen is, a desire, a light, pleasure. You will begin to see how light enters and how it leaves and pushes, and you will begin to feel these actions inside you. That is why we have to learn, because in the end, the study, the inner work, and the feelings will unite to create one big experience. But in the beginning, when your studies is disconnected from your feelings, it is meaningless if someone knows more or less than you, or is correct or not. However, when the study becomes something you feel, then it is forbidden to pass it on to others. You might convey knowledge, but never feelings and emotions. From chapter 4.1 about the study, from the book Path of Kabbalah by Rav Michael Leitman. The issue of what we cannot talk about to others is questioned many times. In Kabbalah, when we say that you are not allowed to do something, This just means that it is impossible to do so, and if you try anyway, you will fail and mess it up. The reasons we do not talk about our emotions is because we just cannot convey our emotions correctly. This is not talking about if we are happy or sad, since these states can be seen on a person's face. It is talking about the details in our emotions that we might not even be aware of in ourselves. It's like explaining to someone how an ice cream tastes. Many of us have experienced this problem when we were trying to convey feelings of love to someone, when we could not find the right words to express what we felt for them. Since Kabbalah is all about internal changes and sometimes without an external expression, it is impossible to share those states with other people. Look at the path as a scientist and not as an emotionally blind believer. And here's the first question. Why is it important to be egoistic towards the goal internally? Nagina.
Sorry, question. Why is it important to be egoistic towards the goal internally? You have to build your internal desire. It's the only thing that matters. You have to play nice on the outside, but internally you have to be willing to run everyone over if they stand in the path of your goal. That's the only thing that'll get you to where you need to be. Next.
Gabriel.
Well, we do this because that's the only thing we have to work with. Because if we don't have any vessels of bestowal, how can we even start using that? So we start with the egoistic internality, and we expand it. We expand it to such extent where it covers the whole of reality. And then only that way we can actually match the other side of the hand, like we've seen, which is, internal power. But this is the only thing we have right now. And if we don't go to to that max extent, we cannot reach the complete oppositeness that would actually show us the other side of the hand. So until we don't reveal the 100% of one side, you cannot see the 100% of the other.
Jeffrey.
Yeah, I'd say, as they say, it's essential. And yet, it seems a little contradictory because, we learned, we have to grow our ego to massive size to take in the whole world. Yet here it's saying to extinguish it in relation to what we will receive. So I guess that happens at the barrier, at the screen, is what I understand that is happening there. But it's the essential, like you say. This is the material we're going to use, and this will increase the thickness and coarseness of the screen also according to how large we grow our ego. And like they say, it's important not to show it externally, remain polite and diplomatic and tactful.
Laura.
Because we need to grow our ego to the maximum. And internally, as we're doing this, we're part of the equation. We keep ourselves in the equation, and we're growing our ego.
Mark.
Well, I think it's all pretty well been said, but the ego, as Gabriel so brilliantly put, is the only thing we've got. That's the only thing we've got in this world, and I need it, and I need to grow it to have a strong enough desire to put up with all this shit and to move forward. And I need to keep this internal because otherwise I would be a monster. I still need to live in society. I still need to get along with each one of you. But internally, I need to be one huge ego. Thank you.
Moshe.
Well, I'll say this, it's important to be very super duper egoistic internally and then have a contrast externally, right? So I think the contrast allows for you to identify also the degree of your ego and sort of the strength of your ego. Again, with everything else, if there's no contrast, we can't see what it is. So I think it's important to have that contrast. And, the more we intensify our ego, it's just, that's all we got, right? That's the gift the Creator gave us, is that ego, our tools. So, so better use it, right?
Renee.
First, I want to compliment everyone. These are great answers. And without the desire, there is no clue. There's nothing to receive. We just go on in life blindly. And Moshe, I appreciate what you said about keeping it internal. Maybe I misunderstood, but keeping it internal. And then what we show the world, the friends, like Najina said, is to play nice, but to keep within our heart our desire and our goal.
Robin.
Well, all I can add to all this is it's the power that we have that gives us the ability to go toward the goal, to push through it, push toward it, to keep us going.
Shelley.
I agree. That our ego, having that egoistic desire, is like having a transmission in your vehicle. Your vehicle can't move without the transmission. So it's our drive to bring us towards the goal. And when we convince our ego, that this is what's going on and what we need to accomplish, and that it's for the benefit of itself, then we become more egoistic and intensify the ego so that we can continue driving it towards the goal.
Jenny writes, because we need our desire to be strong. It's how we change inside. Caesar writes, we need to intensify our egoistic desire for the goal. That is the only way we can increase our desire to pass the barrier. Debbie writes, because that is the emotion we are used to using, so we use our ego fervently, like a lifeline, to keep us going as fuel. And Maria writes, in order to have the energy to invest in the goal, in order to elevate the intensity of this desire above all the other desire competing for fulfillment. Ego wants everything, but I need to use it, steer, so that it can aim towards the goal. In previous generations, a person didn't have to consciously be aware of using their ego just so intensively. And that was because their ego was smaller. They didn't need to use it so much, and they could use the annulment method. And in our generation, the ego has grown to such proportions that it can no longer be used consciously to annul. That is, even if you want to annul with it, it has to be a conscious reason what you're getting out of it. So you need to even convert the annulment into egoism. And that is why you really, in this generation, you really have to be very seriously, internally egoistic about reaching the goal. And that if you're annulling, and we annul all the time, we annul in the workshop, we annul in the society, but you have to internally be aware of what this is going to give you. The next question. Why is it impossible to convey emotions to each other? Gina.
Hello? Can you hear me? Why is it impossible to convey emotions to each other? Well, emotions are purely something that's internal. We can try to describe it in words in the branches of, I guess, that internal sensation and emotion, but it's basically impossible. It's like the example you gave with love. you can tell someone I'm in love, but if you ask them to describe it, they'll be able to tell you what, my heart palpitates maybe when I see this person. Or they can maybe say to you, well, because I feel love, one of the ways it expresses itself is in care and spending time and whatever. But to describe the actual essence and the feeling of love is impossible. It's like describing what sunlight looks like to a blind man. It's basically impossible. But you can describe derivatives of what it may look like once it manifests, maybe, but not the feeling and the essence itself. Next.
Gabriel.
Well, a picture came to my head that we have 5 senses: eyesight, ear, nose, and we can pretty much we can be pretty accurate when describing how we receive things through those senses. But emotions, we receive something, but what's that vessel that captures them, that we're able to discern through them, to feel them and slice them down and to be able to describe it? I mean, I don't know what it is. So if I don't even have control over that, then how can I start actually be able to discern that and be able to share it? So I think perhaps, after in attainment, that's actually what you're able to do. That's what's the 6th sense. I would say that it's because you in those emotions are pretty much something you receive, but you don't know what you're receiving it with. At least me.
Jeffrey.
Yeah, as they said, we simply don't have the words to convey this kind of material. So, that's why they try to restrain us from doing that. And also, to another point you had made before, is that it's until we get to a higher level, we're not going to have a good grasp on what's going on here. So, it's just good to refrain from that. Thank you.
Laura.
Emotions are subjective. We all have our own little pattern. The structure is the same. We're all going to traverse it the same way, but we experience it differently. And so it's difficult to explain what your internal feeling is.
Mark.
These are all really good descriptions of why we can't do this. We all have emotions. We all have perhaps even identical emotions, but the expression of these emotions is so vastly different. Our environments are so vastly different. There's not enough commonality in our backgrounds, all of our life experiences, that make anything that we're able to speak of be coherent to another. So it's impossible. Thank you.
Moshe.
Well, because emotions lives in your perception. So everybody has a different perception. I mean, the body can experience certain things if you get nervous, your heart might start race, or, goosebumps and stuff like that. Body experiences things like that. But the emotion itself, it's in your own perception, right? So everybody has a different perception of what love is or anger is. These are abstract terms, and there's really no clear-cut answer. Everybody experiences it differently.
Renee.
I really appreciate Laura's answer, saying that it's subjective. It's subjective in a sense based on our mood, maybe at the time, our environment, and the time that you receive that particular emotion. And while things in corporality can be explained as carbon or oxygen 2 or H2O, describing an emotion is like trying to describe air. I mean, there's just no words really and they all fall short. So the emotion, in my mind, is to be kept inside, because that emotion is what fuels the desire to achieve the goal.
Robin.
Well, you can't, like everybody said, you can't describe and share the state and the emotions you feel. You can describe the knowledge you get, but it's impossible to share those emotions, like everyone has said.
Shelley.
Well, a good analogy of explaining why we cannot convey emotions to each other is, how would you explain 2 weeks to a child who doesn't understand what time is? You know, it's like, well, is it 2 weeks yet? Well, when is it 2 weeks? Well, you can't really explain it because it's impossible. I mean, you can try, but it's just not feasible. They can't perceive that. And they really can't perceive what you're feeling and emotions, because everybody's perception is different. Like Laura said, it's very subjugated in different aspects of perceiving it.
Debbie writes, our emotions are constantly changing. We cannot use them to label something. Another thing is that we were inherited into a system that labeled emotions to keep inside. We were taught that displaying our emotions as being vulnerable. Jenny wrote, no one would understand what you are feeling. That is why it's impossible to talk about. And Maria writes, emotions have an additional axis, if you will, meaning it's like explaining how a sphere looks, including volume, when vocabulary only includes length and width. We'd have to share the axis to understand the sensation. We can try, but it's already a coarser answer. But at that level, it's a different nakedness. And Caesar writes, we do not talk about our emotions because we cannot express it in words. To convey it, they would have to be in the same state. Caesar actually went on a good point. The idea is that our vessels, our ability to understand sensations, understand emotions. And that is why when someone has passed the barrier, he can understand the sensation of somebody else who has passed the barrier, because they've both gone through the same state. Just like Shelley said, you can't explain to someone, what is 2 weeks like unless they've experienced it themselves. And then you can say 2 weeks, and they've also felt it, and so they can understand what you're talking about. Of course, the expression of that emotion will be different, right? Because it's tied to thoughts or different experiences that went through life or different stuff like that. But still, the emotion itself, people can understand, right? So if someone's experienced happiness, they can understand when somebody else is happy. And when someone has been sad at least once, they can understand what other people are feeling sad. And of course, there's depth in there, right? And if someone's felt the depth of that sadness, then they can feel it as well. So the idea is that that's what we're trying to do in Kabbalah. We're actually trying to get these vessels through these discernments and grow our internal power, which will actually allow us to feel a wider variety and range of all different emotions. And then we can share to each other the names and appellations of the states of emotions, but we can't actually share the way I feel it. I can say, for example, when I pass the barrier, I feel emptiness. And somebody else will be, yeah, that's exactly what I felt. I felt emptiness. But if you say, describe what that emptiness feels, if they start going to like imaginative forms of like, oh, I feel that I'm on top of the world and often stuff like that, what normally will happen is that people will corporealize it and it'll lose all what it's trying to convey. So the idea is that Kabbalah only talks about names and appellations that won't be corporealized. They give them sort of structure names, and we can share those structure names, as it said, totally freely. It's just that when we're trying to express it in words, we're of course expressing it in the way we cry, we're happy, we're sad, and that's fine to express that. But it's hard to give somebody else, try feeling this, and then trying to give them a sensation of what you felt. The third question. How can we enforce the analysis in Kabbalah from a scientific point of view? Najina.
I gotta say, I'm not exactly sure what this question is asking. Is it asking about actual scientific research, i.e. something in a scientific magazine, or are we talking about the science of Kabbalah? I got a little confused.
I'll just clarify because I see other people have the same question. The idea is that in Kabbalah, sometimes people feel that it's if we were talking about the emotions, they're like, oh, it can't be described, you can't say anything, you can't tell what a person's state is, and all different stuff like that. So this question is to counter that and say, why is it, even though we can't talk about the expression of our emotions, why is Kabbalah still very structured and very scientific, and the science is on ourselves? We're basically working on our perception.
Well, it's like you said, we can see structures that a person is living or communicating or maybe expressing from an internal place. You can see a structure, like happiness. You can more or less say, well, this is something that may be expressed by someone who's feeling internally happy, even if it doesn't agree with their internal state. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Right. Everybody, and that's why I like why you labeled certain states that people go through chaos. Everyone understands what it feels like to be in chaos, whether, internally, emotionally, whatever that is. Darkness. Everyone can more or less internalize and see where a state they went through in their life, which it really felt like darkness, and so on and so forth. And then spirit, that anticipation, like you always give the example of picking up your girlfriend from the airport. So it's that structure, but the individual discernments and how it plays out once you pass through Keter down to Chokhmah, down to Bina, down to Tiferet, at the end, it will be through your actions, you. How does the person finally behave, at least externally? Sometimes I think it expresses itself, but it goes through those basic structures all the way down or up, I guess, in this case. Next.
Gabriel.
Well, we make a hypothesis, which in this case is our goal, which is to be the creator, and then we experiment. We have some procedures that we write, and we experiment on it. We try out. We have a group. We go there, we experiment. And after that, we see the results of it, we analyze it, we categorize them, we write them down, and then we repeat again. And then we compare it to the different results that we get. And if we get different results, if we're getting the same results, well, it means that our hypothesis was correct. We're advancing, or we're moving towards we want to move.
Jeffrey.
Yeah, I would say using the metrics and the benchmarks that we've already established. We have our foundation point. There's none else besides him. We are the creator. And take it from there. Apply those three rules that we go over all the time, from the impossible, secret, and well, you know what I mean. And that, that's what I say. I apply, the metrics that I've learned to keep myself pretty much on track. Thank you.
Laura.
Everything has structure to it, even chaos. So when you start understanding the patterns, and then when you start seeing and recognizing the patterns, then you can understand them and use them and move.
Mark.
These things that we do in Kabbalah are based on the scientific method. We perform this, we do this, and we get a predictable result, and they're repeatable. And they're repeatable to the point that we've seen this evolve and happen here amongst us. We have watched as these procedures have been followed, and we know the results of them. And it's therefore it's more like a scientific method. Thank you.
Moshe.
At the end of the day, we do the best we can to describe these states in the English language. Of course, it's never going to be perfectly accurate, right? Because we all have our own perceptions of things. So when I say to somebody, "Oh, does that feel like a restriction?" What the hell is that supposed to mean? To one person that means something, and another means something else. But we do the best we can to describe these in words, and but at the end of the day, there is a structure to it all, right? Because there's a structure of reality of how it was created, and our way back is the same way. So how it's experienced with every person, I would say, is going to be very similar, though. But we do the best we can, I guess we could say, in the words. That's why it's very difficult. It's very difficult to explain emotions in words. Obviously, that's why Kabbalah is such an interesting science, right?
Renee.
I think that, we read about the Ari, Baal Salam, all these famous Kabbalists, and until we actually put it into some type of relevant result for ourselves, it's all theory. The structure, all of it is just theory. So I would say to enforce the analysis in Kabbalah would have to come from the point of the ego. What can I take from this? Does it work for me? And that's the only question I want answered is okay, these methods, what's happened prior, what's been related or shared, revealed, does it work for me? If it doesn't work for me, then what's the point? It's at that point, it's just you're studying philosophy.
Robin.
Well, you don't want to get lost in the emotions. They can be misleading and confusing sometimes. And so I think you view more from the point of view of your intention and your ego to be able to see where you are.
Shelley.
We study it, we see the structure, we scrutinize, we dissect, we bring it all in, and we wind up with a hypothesis of what we think it might be, and then we convince ourselves that to our ego that this is the reward of this hypothesis that we have come up with from all of the scrutinies and all the questions and all the study that we have. And that builds up the ego to be more drivable and workable for us.
Maria.
Is my audio okay?
Perfect.
Okay. Well, I have several thoughts. Shelley brings out an important point. How you can convince yourself. It's very important, and it's very dangerous because we can convince ourselves of many things, or we can be convinced ourselves of many things. Even the programming that we got instilled as we were kids, even how Hitler controlled many by these words. We can convince ourselves of many things. And I also think that, sorry, there's a train passing by here. I also think that in Kabbalah, it is important to remember that the research that you're doing is on yourself. You are the research. I am my own. I'm the researcher of myself. So the findings that I'm noticing, these sensations that yes, I may not be able to relate to someone. That's why you don't necessarily talk about this stuff to someone that doesn't have an awakened point in the heart. They can relate to it, but there's sensations, there's things that you're experiencing, there's ego that you're revealing that the system itself reveals when it deems that you're ready to be at that level. You're the researcher, and you are testing the results for yourself on yourself. There shouldn't be someone to tell me, I mean, don't get me wrong, having a scale, something to compare is helpful. But it's as if someone is selling me a laundry product and they're telling you, I'm going to wash this shirt for you. And you have innately some type of idea of what it should look like when it's sparkling clean. There's something in you that senses that, or else I'm being short-sold. And maybe they cleaned it up a little bit, but it doesn't seem that clean. And they're saying, oh, it's already clean. And I'm like, something doesn't sound. I think you yourself can be testing to. I don't want to sell myself short of what it is to be in attainment, but it's all goes back to you're the researcher and you're the research. And yes, I think that when you're working in labs, we help each other, and by what someone is saying and say, yes, I remember that, I was feeling that, or maybe it's the reverse. They're telling me, yes, I felt that, and then you will feel this. And so, yes, we do help each other, but nonetheless, at the end of the day, it's you who has to experience this now in this lifetime. And that's why we're a scientist, because I should not have someone tell me something that I'm not yet perceiving. It's a matter of perception, so it's a matter of me perceiving it as well.
Jenny writes, we keep questioning everything like a scientist. We don't just be led blindly without finding answers. Debbie writes, we process our states and compare our method constantly to the process of attaining the different states. It becomes a formula that we can do consciously. And Caesar writes, studying the method of countless, we can research and analysis it step by step, phase by phase, as we go through the path. Throughout our life, we'll feel various sensations, and even when we're going on the path, we'll feel all different emotions. And the idea of the structure is to basically allow you to know where you are and where you're going to, and what you have to work on next. And on one hand, some will feel like it's limiting, but if you look at the entire Kabbalah material, it's all about limitations. It's all about rules and regulations. And you're like, how is that meant to help me? Well, the idea is that when you learn about the rules and regulations that you're under anyway, then you can actually reveal yourself and actually know how to use the rules and regulations. So the idea is to going from concealment, where you think, oh, I can feel whatever I want, or I can think whatever I want, and I don't want any limitations, and I don't want somebody to tell me what attainment is or not. And then the structure comes and says, no, this state is like this, and this state is like that. It's like, well, could I feel a different sensation when I pass the barrier? It's like, no, you'll always feel that emptiness. But what if I want to, wake up and I feel like, yeah, I passed the barrier? It's like, no, you'll feel emptiness. You'll feel that neutral state. The whole idea is you will be neutral emotionally, so that when you actually bring back in the light, then you have your screen to reflect it and stuff like that. But the idea is that the structure enables you to actually feel more, not to feel less.
Yeah, I'm dealing with one of you post-barrier critters, and geez, I've been breaking their chops a little bit about the big, like, blasé about it, but now I understand more. Like you say, I noticed chat too, like they get more quiet, it's like when I was busy working the 6 days a week, it was like there was thousands of messages I hadn't read. Now it's, I can keep up with it.
We normally feel like there's an opposition between knowledge and emotion, and the idea of attainment is the combination. So one hand you have that structure of that knowledge. It's like the restriction is like this, then you go through the 5 phases of Adam Kanwan. What if I want to go through 6? No, there's only 5. I'm sorry. It's like, but I want to feel 6. It's like, well, you can want to feel whatever you want. This is the way it's structured. The path is the same for everybody. Your sensations that you will feel will be slightly different for each person, depending on their class, depending on their background, depending on the situation where they're feeling it, on what it's going to be applied on. That will be different for each person. but the structure is really like down to science. It's exactly the same. It's like, it would be like someone saying, well, what if I jump off the 10th story building? What if gravity won't work on me? It's like, no, gravity will work on you. Yeah, but what if I don't want it to work on me? It's like, no, it'll work on you. So you don't have a choice whether the law works, but what you can do is you can use the law and then reach space. So you can use gravity to reach space.
There's parameters, guidelines. All scientific pursuits have parameters. We can't be running around all willy-nilly.
And they're really not to limit you. They're actually to enable you. And we're so used to thinking that rules limit us. And the idea, as we mature, the idea is to understand that rules actually give us a framework. They give us a place to actually express ourselves, and not the opposite way around. It's like someone would say, language limits my expression. It's like, no, if you learn about the rules of language, you can actually learn to express yourself much more than if you don't talk at all.
And we should be demanding this for the work we put in, like even here, by coming here and participating. I'm demanding. And this gives value to the next minute.
I get a sensation here of why it's important to feel, for the ego at least, to feel envious, because at the end of the day, I'm not going to measure someone that holds the same degree as I do. Let's say that I'm a teacher, and here comes a teacher and another teacher. There's teaching the same subject as me, and I see the lesson, or their let's say I see their credentials. Okay, they studied so and so forth, and I'm seeing them teaching their lesson. And at the end of the day, I could care less where you studied. If I'm seeing that you're not reaching the students at the capacity that I can, I need to feel envious. I need to feel like, let me have something to look forward to. Because if I see that this teacher, you could have all the science you want about math, but if you can't control in an urban setting the 35 teachers that I have in a classroom and get them to where I need to get them, and so forth, then I don't care for your degree. That speaks nothing to me. But on the contrary, if I'm looking at you and I'm seeing, my God, look at that. Look how they're look how they're operating and not being operated on, then I do need that envy. I do need something to look forward to, or else I'm going to say, what do I want this for? I don't want to just have like a degree. But the envy is important, because we only see slices of each other, especially virtually. Like, I don't know who, on a personal level, I don't know who each and one of you are. I see you guys and I see your comments and I like them, and I feel sensations. Oh, okay, I see. But at the end of the day, it all comes back to one of your original questions. Why do we want the ego so much concentrated on this? Because if I'm going to it's like, if I'm going to pay and I'm going to invest my time in Kabbalah for every minute that I have since I wake up, since I go to sleep, I then question my investment, and I think that's one of the reasons why envy becomes so important, because we need something to look forward to as to what it means to this skate. When you're telling me these steps, I have to look forward to something, and the ego is willing to, once we feel that envy, oh, I want to speed up. I do want that. Yep, I want to be there. But envy, I think, plays an important part.
In the beginning of the article, as you were reading through it, this demand that we need to make, that we're accountable, or we demand from every minute. Can you go back to that, Zakai? Can we look at that again, please?
You want to look at the quote?
Yes.
Okay. There you go. Yeah, you can read it.
Why do I need to study, work, live, and where will all of this ultimately take me? We should regard the Creator. We should regard the Creator in our every act and always want Him and cleave to Him. We must constantly think and examine what He wants from us. The purpose should be right in front of us every single moment. If the goal is always clear, we will turn one into a Kabbalist, and we can begin to feel the knowledge from the spiritual world. Learning more or less of the text is of little importance. We use the knowledge to connect with the material. The more we study, the greater our demand for the Creator becomes, and the more intense the question, why have I still got nothing? Where is the result of my efforts? I have put in so many hours of work, lost a lot of money because I did not work when I learned, and I do not give enough time to my family. I could have had more fun in other places. All of these arguments only increase our egoistic demand of the Creator. Why have I still got nothing? For that reason, we must claim reward for every minute, every second that we put into Kabbalah. We should not say, I am here because I'm an altruist. We can be altruistic elsewhere, but in Kabbalah, we should be completely stingy. We must question every minute given to Kabbalah. Why? What for? Only then will we focus directly on the goal. If we do not demand reward for every minute, it means that we do not need the next minute, that we make no demands from our studies. If that is the case, we will be left empty-handed. Examination of the reasons for our actions, every minute is our greatest asset. Our minds and bodies vehemently revolt against it. We would do anything, draw pictures, learn meticulously about the Sephirot, the worlds, write articles about Kabbalah, anything to escape examining the aim, the primary question of the connection with the Creator. That just seems so amazing. And what other than my ego or my envy to others that have already done this, or I have seen that have done this and the results of this, what do I use to get that fuel, that burning desire, that minute-to-minute examination?
When we talk about the 3 laws of unnecessary, impossible, and secrets, it's basically to really focus you on what should you be dealing with. You should be dealing with your perception. You should be dealing with the states you're going through in your future, and it should be about yourself, right? And just really add that focus. When people pass a barrier and they are, you're interacting with them, there's 2 reasons why a person has to expose himself. Number 1 is so that they can, express their states freely, and they don't have to constantly sort of hide themselves of maybe I passed, maybe I haven't. They can just be very expressive. That's from the person who passed the barrier. From the person who hasn't passed the barrier, it helps to know that someone's passed the barrier. 1, it gives confidence that it works. Number 2, it allows them to ask them questions of, how does it feel after the barrier, and all different things like that. What is spirituality? What is not? Right. So it's less about what does it feel like. It's more about does it not feel like. Right. So it's like, when you pass the barrier, it's like, oh, you probably feel you're so lovely and amazing and you're so happy. It's like, no, you pass the barrier and you feel emptiness, and that's why it's called emptiness. Right. And so it helps. The more people that cross the barrier, the more you can align yourself to different perspectives, because each person still has extra perspectives, even though they're all experiencing it as emptiness. They'll experience it from different views and perspectives and sort of opinions, even though they're all going through the same state, right? And then it helps when you ask multiple people. You're like, so how did you feel emptiness? How did you feel emptiness? How did you feel emptiness? And it's like a GPS satellite. It allows you to really focus and get a common view between them, understand, okay, I haven't felt that yet, so I understand I haven't passed the barrier. For example, sometimes people think, oh, I'm probably in a high state. They come into system concepts and they think very quickly, oh, I'm probably at 3.4, or I'm at 4.4, I'm just before the barrier. It's like, no, you haven't gone through the pain point. You haven't gone through phase 3. People like to skip phase 3 because it's darkness. They're like, oh, I'm always at the end of darkness. Oh, I'm already in the light. It's like you can't reach 3.3, which is the pain point, without working with an individual. So if someone just comes at system concepts and he's just in the group, and he's like, I've reached 4.4. It's like, it's impossible to reach it without an individual. You need someone to specifically work on your pain point, on your perception details that you can't do with a group, and you can't do with the society, and you can't do with humanity. So the idea is that, first of all, one of the reasons I love this quote is because it's so egoistic. And this is from Rav's book, Path of Kabbalah. And, it's important to see that you have to be very targeted. The ego it has got the power to target you. Then you've got the goal to tell you what to target. And if you combine them together, that really keeps you on focus on the goal. Each of the every time I quote in System Concepts, there's a link there. You can actually click on it and go to the original Kabbalah Info website, to the original material. So if you click, for example, about the study, it'll take you to the link to the Kabbalah Info website, where it will show you Rav Leitman's book of Path of Kabbalah, which is I very highly recommend to read it. It's a very good book. There's a lot of quotes that I actually use from it in System Concepts, because it's really good.
I have a question, Zohar. Previously, you had mentioned how the books were written, like the Zohar, or I remember how you described it. I think it was like gossiping, but without naming the people, or talking about emotions that you go through, but not necessarily having anything to do with how they, with the externality, and that's how they wrote, in order for one to then relate to, oh yes, I know exactly what they were talking about, but because you're actually removing sort of a layer and describing it in such a way that others, once they read it, they can relate to that. How does that differ from what you're stating, as far as like, even when you're at the same state? Because I envisioned what you were saying as like, oh yes, they're here right now, and so forth and so on. But how does that differ even from the perception of the individual? As you were stated, like, even reaching this state may be perceived by each individual differently. What is the difference in that?
First of all, the Zohar is encoded, so you can't read, of course, on face value. So you might read about punishments, but it's actually talking about advancement. That's one thing. The second thing is that when two people are going to experience, let's say they cross the barrier, so they, when you have multiple people crossing, you connect, you talk with each one, and you sort of hear their discernments, and then you're able to really see how, like, on one hand, there are multiple classes that are passed. Like, you've got the Avram, the Yitzchak, the Yaakov, and the Yosef. They're all feeling the emptiness. That's the commonality between them all. They're all feeling that neutral state of not feeling good and not feeling sad, just feeling neutral and feeling that disorientation of, I'm in this new state. But a Avram will experience it slightly different, that emptiness, than a Yitzchak. A Yitzchak will feel that emptiness, but will be more grounded. Like, I've noticed that the internal lefts, when they pass the barrier, they're more grounded, and that the internal rights are a little less grounded. They're a little more emotional. They're more like, oh, I don't know. So the idea is that you could have three people that cross the barrier. They're all feeling emptiness, right? They're all feeling that first restriction, that barrier, that's all the same. One person is like, I don't know if I passed, I need to feel it for myself. Yes, I know that I'm not in 4.4, so I'm not feeling that elevation and excitement anymore, but I don't know where I am. You could be lying to me, and so forth. That's one kind of expression people give when they pass the barrier. The other expression they'll give is, yeah, I passed the barrier, because I've looked at the structure. It makes perfect sense that I've reached the state. Therefore, I passed the barrier. My sensations align with the material. That's how I know that I passed the barrier. Then you have a third person who is like, not like questioning it like the first person, and not structural like the second one, and is more sort of like just floating through it, and not just, not dwelling on it too much. And when they do get that screen afterwards, then they're like, oh, I passed the barrier. It takes them a delay, right? So they They don't understand they pass a barrier already when they feel that emptiness. They have to wait for that sensation of that empowerment that happens when you get your screen. And then they're like, oh, that means I passed the barrier. So they've got more of that delay. So you've got three people experiencing the same state, but differently.
If I can add to something, early on, I guess in the phases, phase 3 and 4, early phase 4 maybe, I found my ego trying to create phases or sensations. And what I realized eventually is once I actually attained that state or that phase, it was clear to me that my ego was trying to create it. And the reason why I say this is because to just clarify that the structure is so fixed that even though our egos are still doing what they do, the system will not allow that, the graduation to occur. And once it does occur, you know it. And you see in hindsight, your ego and the way it tries to manipulate. It's just a very structured outline that's black and white, and we color it based on our makeup, I guess. But it's not faulty in any way, no matter how cunning the ego is. It's very fixed and very clearly structured.
I think one of the beauties here is that the more people go through these states, the more you've got people to actually question and answer and sort of work with to actually find the commonality between the states. And then you have the structure to really realign it. So then you have how people felt in that state, and then you've got the structure, and you align them together, and you're really able to express, increase the clarity of the method accordingly.
Well, I think that's so valuable, what you just said, Jenny, because the ego is so tricky. It tricks us into thinking things. It tricks us into questioning things. We may feel that we're someplace that we're not, or we may question that we're in a place, but it is so tricky. The ego is that tricky. And to know that this system, that there's that clarity, that there's that certainty when you reach that point, that's very valuable. Thank you.
Well, I think we'll stop here and enter the after party.